The Israeli military has told residents in Lebanon to evacuate areas close to buildings used by Hezbollah as it begins carrying out what it calls extensive strikes against the militant group. Israel's new wave of airstrikes on southern Lebanon follow a weekend in which both sides exchanged hundreds of rockets, some striking close to the Israeli port city of Haifa. Israel's defense minister says the operations will continue until residents can return to evacuated areas near the northern border with Lebanon. Hezbollah has vowed to keep fighting until a ceasefire is secured in Gaza. For the very latest, I'm joined by our correspondents Emily Gordine in Jerusalem and Mohamad Chreyteh in Beirut. Emily, the Israeli Defense Forces saying they're conducting widespread strikes on Hezbollah targets across Lebanon. What more can you tell us about Israel's plans at this point?
Well, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said this morning that his troops had landed serious blows on Hezbollah and that, quote, if they hadn't gotten the message yet, they certainly will. Now, we saw this morning that the IDF launched fresh strikes on Lebanon, and it's told the residents of southern Lebanon to move away from Hezbollah targets. Asked whether this could all lead to a ground invasion of Lebanon, the IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari responded that they would do whatever is necessary, whatever is needed. Ultimately, Israel wants to return its residents to their homes in the north. Equally, Hezbollah seems determined not to let that happen until there's a ceasefire in Gaza. So even though both sides at this point say they don't want an all-out war, neither side seems quite ready to back down yet.
Mohamad, what are you hearing in participation of these strikes that have begun this morning?
Well, there's an increasing fear of a larger war that everyone here in Beirut feels that it's closer than any time ever. You know, Israel and Hezbollah have been trading skirmishes over the border since last October. But last week, this confrontation entered a new phase of heavy bombardment. And I mean, of course, the intensity of the airstrikes and bombardment is significantly increasing, but also the targeted geography on both sides of the border. This morning, Israel launched the most widespread wave of airstrikes targeting towns in southern Lebanon and eastern Beqa, deep inside Lebanese territory. This follows heavy airstrikes on Saturday and Sunday that killed at least 3 people here in Lebanon. Over the weekend, Hezbollah launched hundreds of rockets and attacking drones towards northern Israel, reaching Haifa in a very significant escalation. Now, we're hearing growing threats from Israel about further escalating the bombardment on Lebanese towns, targeting what it calls Hezbollah infrastructure. And this will indeed push the militant group to respond by striking Israel back in the north.
So as evacuations continue in Lebanon, Emily, this escalation has authorities in northern Israel on high alert, of course, too. Most places there must look like ghost towns.
Absolutely, and they've been looking like ghost towns for almost a year now. Take the city of Chreyteh, which is a city of 26,000 people in normal times. It's been reduced to about 3,000, and it's been like that for months, and that's also where the pressure is coming from on the government to take action. Now, today, the Home Front Command warned that we're looking at a day of heavy fighting. Yesterday already saw hundreds of thousands of Israelis take shelter in bomb shelters. The north especially is on high alert, but also regions a bit further down, a bit deeper into Israel. Schools have been closed in the north. However, hospitals are moving patients underground. Public gatherings have been restricted, and many will be undoubtedly checking their phones for constant updates. Many have an app installed on their phone that alerts them to rockets, to rockets incoming to Israel. But like I said, the people in the north especially have been putting pressure on the government for months now to take more action so that people can return to their homes, and they are preparing for more fighting.
Mohamad, this isn't the first time violence has broken out on this level between Israel and Hezbollah. What are people in Lebanon going through again?
this confrontation has been going for a while, for years, at least between the 1980s and the year 2000, when Israel ended its occupation to Lebanon's south. Then a war broke out again in 2006, what Israel calls the Second Lebanon War, and it lasted for 33 days. And last October, when Hezbollah launched a military operation, several military attacks on Israel in support for Gaza, as it says. This is really continuingly disrupting people's life on so many aspects. For instance, more than 100,000 people left their homes in south of Lebanon and are taking refuge in Beirut and across the country in the mountains. It really feels like we are in a deadlock here. This is what I'm hearing. As Israel says, operations in Lebanon will continue until safe return for Israelis is safeguarded. In return, Hezbollah says it will continue to strike Israel in support for Gaza, and that Israelis will not return to the north before a ceasefire is secured in Gaza. In the meantime, more people in Lebanon are expected to evacuate as the confrontation is violently escalating and widening.
Mohamad, thanks for your reporting from Beirut, and Emily for yours from Jerusalem. Well, Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry says at least 40 people were killed in Israeli strikes on the weekend. They hit the Jabalia refugee camp, as well as targets in Gaza City and elsewhere across the Strip.
Rescuers raced to the scene after the Jabalia refugee camp is hit by Israeli airstrikes. As they search for survivors, they find a child, injured but alive. For others living in this house, it is already too late. This attack is one of several Israeli strikes on Gaza over the weekend. Early on Sunday, another strike hit this school that was being used as a shelter. The Israeli military says it was targeting Hamas militants it said were sheltering there. As people in Gaza endure more grief and loss, many fear that their suffering has become overlooked.
All the news and all the media now focus on Lebanon. Gaza has been forgotten.
We are afraid that the situation in Lebanon will affect us, that all attention will turn to Lebanon and we will become forgotten. We hope that all people care about us and see where we are. In the wake of the war against Lebanon, though, the negotiations and truce regarding the war in Gaza do not exist. Meanwhile, in Lebanon, mourners gathered for the funeral of some of those killed in an Israeli strike in Beirut last week. The attack claimed the lives of dozens, including top Hezbollah commanders, but also civilians, including children. Israel says it is facing relentless attacks on different fronts, and that its priority is protecting its own people.
Let me be clear. We are a peaceful nation. We do not seek war, nor do we desire it. However, we will not stand by as our people are attacked.
But as Hezbollah says, it will only halt its attacks on Israel if the war in Gaza ends. Peace in the region seems even more elusive.
The Israeli army on Sunday raided and closed the bureau of media network Al Jazeera in the occupied West Bank. The Qatari broadcaster aired footage of heavily armed and masked troops entering their premises in Ramallah. Israel has ordered a 45-day shutdown. 4 months ago, Israel closed the channel's offices in East Jerusalem. The board of the Foreign Press Association in Israel and the Palestinian territories has condemned the raid, saying it signals a shift away from democratic values. Thibault Broutin is the Director General of Reporters Without Borders. DW asked him what's behind Israel's shutdown of Al Jazeera's office in Ramallah.
I think what we have to question is the will of the Israeli authorities to have specific laws and specific regulations targeting this channel. This channel is one of the most seen within the region, and it has an impact. It is a channel that is well known for its reports, which are numerous, accurate, and are in line with international standards of journalism. So, trying to depict Al Jazeera as a propaganda outlet, as a terrorism group, is a technique in order to silence a journalism worthy of that name.
Thibault Poitin for Reporters Without Borders there.